regularly scheduled meeting of the Planning Commission for Tuesday, August 23rd, 2022. I'm going to open the meeting at 7:30. May we please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
May I have roll call, please?
Mr. Fitzer? Mr. Hara?
Here.
Mr. Kucera?
Here.
Mr. Nushai? Ms. Redmond? Mr. Sanaki?
Present.
Mr. Tinlin?
Present.
Mr. Watson?
Yes.
Mr. Yell? Ms. Quorum.
Thank you. Agenda item number 4 is approval of the agenda. It's the approval of this agenda in front of us, not the last meeting. Does anybody have any changes they'd like to make in the agenda? I see nothing to change at this point. Okay, we don't even have to vote on that. We'll just automatically approve it. Agenda item number 5 is approval of the regular meeting minutes from July 26th, 2022.
I make a motion to approve the regular minutes from the meeting on July 26, 2022.
Support.
Any changes, any corrections? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Mr. Sanaki?
Yes.
Mr. Tinlin?
Yes.
Mr. Watson?
Yes.
Mr. Hara?
Yes.
Mr. Kucera?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Agenda item number 6 is public discussion, items not on the agenda. Is there anyone here from the public wishing to speak? No one here, no one online.
There's no one on the Zoom.
Is there a way to tell that?
Yeah, because I can see the list of participants here. And it's me and Bridget is in that room, so.
Oh, okay. So we actually have some people watching then. Okay, I will then close public discussion. And we'll move on to agenda number 7 is consideration of a request for the site plan approval at 255 West 14 Mile Road, which is the Clausen Manor. And Joe, you want to start us out with it?
Yes. So I think we're all familiar with Clausen Manor. It's the tallest building in town. You really can't miss it. I'll throw a few images up on the screen just so that to make sure we're all on the same page about what we're looking at. Gotta open them first. There it is. So here's an aerial, should be popping up any second. And you can see the building there and its parking lots around it. A lot of the parking spaces are covered with carports. This is a view from the 14-mile side in the little drop-off apron that's on that side of the building. This is from the east, the downtown side. And then this is from kind of the south and a little bit west, the neighborhood side. I'm going to stop that share. I'm going to bring up the plans now. And because this is really focused on the facade, we're going to focus on the facade illustrations. So this is what they're proposing for the facade. They have brought a sample of the material that they're proposing. So they've got 2 materials. They brought a sample of that blue metal paneling that they're showing here that they can share with you tonight. And Sorry. This is way easier to do with a mouse. I've got this little trackpad, and I'm trying to move around in the document, and it's not letting me click. Okay. But anyway, that's the look that they're planning for the building. And now I'll get into my letter here. Really did not have any issues with the plans as presented. They are proposing that facade change, and then they are also kind of redoing the generator and dumpster enclosures in the back of the building on the south side at the southwest corner of the building. And everything they're showing on the plan is compliant with the zoning ordinance. Even though they're not planning to change the number of units or the sizes of the units and things, I gave you the analysis of where the building stands relative to the current zoning, just so that you're aware of what the nonconformities are. Clausen Manor was, of course, built quite a while ago, and zoning has changed since then. So I just wanted to kind of give you the backstory there and let you know where it stands relative to our current regulations. But as far as the changes that they're proposing, they are compliant with the zoning ordinance, and we don't have any issues with what they're proposing. The materials meet our material standards, and the trash enclosure and generator enclosure also meet the standards of our ordinance. So if any of you have any questions for me, I'm happy to answer them, and otherwise we can let the applicant tell you a little bit about what they're looking to do.
I'm kind of surprised how thick this is. Is this the thickness of what's going on? Ouch.
Yeah, that's the basis for design. You know, that's the panel that we landed on with the architect to get out there and to start the design with. You know, having said that, obviously, you know, there's material pricing and things that go on, but as of right now, that's it. And we do have a number of buildings. I think there's like 5 or so in Michigan that we've got that exact panel on. So we're familiar with it. We did
So
those.
this just surfaces over the existing outside?
Yeah, exactly. Yep. So the buildings that were built similar,
Am I seeing it this way, or am I seeing
they
it this way?
they go together, and so that would just continue to rotate a little bit clockwise, a little bit. Yeah, so it'd be horizontal. Yeah, I think that's what you're saying is turn it a little more. They'd go that way.
Yeah.
But that, again, too, we're working all that out as far as to which type of panels, but that's the style and brand that we're using for the basis.
Good.
Yeah.
Joe, can you put the picture of the redesign back up, please?
Yeah.
So what time frame are you guys looking at? Like when do you plan on beginning, and when do you anticipate you'd be complete with that?
Okay. Yep. So right now there's a window, but we're looking at, it's probably starting somewhere around December, and we're looking at a 12-month project.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to be starting in the winter months doing this?
Well, the panel, I take that back. So the whole project will start in December. The panels will most likely, we'll get those procured. We'll have to order them. Materials will get, take some time to get. It'll start as soon as weather breaks in spring. So I was just thinking globally, whole project-wise, we're getting cabinets and everything inside as well. But,
So when you start, you would have all the materials ready to go. You wouldn't be starting and then, we have to wait for material, and it may be a half-completed process.
right, yeah. Once we would start with so we're using Casco, a local contractor. Once their subcontractor would engage on the project, as soon as they start putting the panels on, it would just work its way up.
That's top,
So
okay.
in the whole envelope that's getting done, it's the roof, the windows, and the panels. So the roof can happen independent. Most likely that would happen first, just based on our timing and how we can get everybody into it. The windows would be installed ahead of the panels. So we'd go through with window crews and install all those from the inside. And then when the panels come in, we'd come in and we'd tie into the window flashings that we had prepared for them.
Got it.
So, but you wouldn't see you wouldn't see a partially completed building, because the new windows would just look new, and then the panels would work their way up,
Got
one
it.
face at a time.
So windows, what are you looking at for windows?
A commercial, a high-rise commercial window that meets all the, wind loads that are designed by.
open windows that can open from the apartment?
Yeah, and
Okay.
what we typically do on those, when we have a high-rise situation, we always contact you guys in the fire department and verify what the constraints are. Typically, it's, the window itself obviously can function fully, but a lot of times the fire departments will want us to prohibit them from opening beyond 4 inches for fall protection.
Okay, yep. Lift-up windows, I'm assuming?
So we'll do sliders, and the reason being is it's for seniors, so the windows will go this way.
Got
So
it.
instead of lifting up, it's
That makes
essentially,
sense.
it's just you twist it, but seniors, it's a lot easier for them to operate a window on a roller. And you can get some, really heavy commercial windows, you can get a lot bigger window, and it moves really freely.
What's the principal motivation for the upgrade at this time?
So we are, glad you asked, we are a new owner of the property. So and Zach could do a good job explaining us as a company. I'm the construction guy, but I can talk to it a little. Yeah, he'll tell you about the nonprofit senior affordable.
Yeah, so CSI Spartan Development, we are a nonprofit developer and manager of affordable senior housing. We have 61 properties in 4 states, but we're actually headquartered right down the road in Warren. I think some of you know Diane Smith. She's a Clausen resident. She's
Yep,
my
I know
boss.
Diane well.
Yeah, yeah. So what we're all about is, building high-quality, affordable housing for seniors. What kind of makes us special is that we actually we have what's called a cooperative management system. What that means is that our entire board of directors is actually made up of people who live in our buildings. And then at the building level, our residents make a lot of the decisions, and they oversee things like leasing and maintenance to an extent. One example of this system is actually that our residents voted on this. So Jim, our architect, prepared some, potential designs for us, and then we got everyone together that lives in the building, and this is the design that they chose. So it's something that the residents there really want.
Hey, when did you take over management of the building?
April 28th.
28th?
So what's your occupancy rate right now?
With the transition, because we had some things that we had to do with HUD, so it involves some like income verification, things like that. So some of our residents, they did decide to relocate at that point, but I believe we're at 91%. We definitely expect to get that back up to 100%.
And just a quick point, so during construction, I need a certain amount of vacancy. So I've requested that from operations right now, that they get me 2 floors so that we can make it a lot easier on the residents. So
can move
there'll be
around.
there'll be a slight increase in vacancy before we then close the gap again.
Okay.
So, I'm happy. Any more questions?
Yeah, just a few. So, very unique situation with this particular property in Clausen. As you say, it's the only high-rise of its kind. So, the material that you've chosen here, is it? It's going over, I think, concrete, right? Basically
Yeah, so
now.
the current construction of the building, it's cast in place, and it's got columns and floor slabs, and then to infill, it's all just CMU block. So it's all block walls around the outside, and it's got this really small stone. It looks like an exposed aggregate, but it's like applied. So in 1970, they applied some sort of a, mortar and embedded the stone. So right now, the surface is just that really rough stone surface. What we're going to do to get the panels, because we wanted to change the look drastically, the building was fairly tired. There's not much you can do with that type of stone, right? You can just keep painting over it, but you just can't get a different appearance. And we've got a number of these buildings that already have gone through this transition where the panels were added, and it was the late 90s. Jim's firm, Fusco, Schaefer, and Pappas, oddly enough, was the original designer that built this building back in 1970. So here he is back doing the however many renovations.
A few years before I was there.
I was going to say, you look great.
But so anyways, but the panel systems back in the 90s, we went through and we had a number of buildings like this that were built kind of a similar age. They were having some issues with water infiltration, and the panels hit a number of targets, right? Increases the insulation, gets the water out off the face of the building, gives it a cleaner look. Royal Oak Manor in Royal Oak, we just went through a process where we painted, and it's these panels that are underneath and got a completely different look. So that's the driving force for the panels is really it's just to give it a complete facelift. And that was the only way we thought to do it. You know, like I said, basis for design is that Centria panel right there, and that's a metal clad. All the ones we have are Roberts, same brand. We also were looking at, like, there's a product called Nichiha, and then there's some different things, trying to find the right product. But like I said, right now, this is the one.
Yeah. Only reason I ask is, you know, we have strong winds here, and for this particular property, like Clausen's really never had to worry about the building deteriorating. Like, it may look
Right.
old, but because it's old, but the material construction is very low maintenance, and it didn't require any upkeep, you know. Whereas
Yep.
some materials that you choose look fantastic when they're brand new, and then 5 years later, not so fantastic, and 10 years later, like, maybe terrible, and at this height, maybe even could be a safety hazard if things are falling off from the 10th floor, 12th floor?
15.
15?
Yeah.
So it's an area of unfamiliarity for me, that material, so how it's secured to the construction of the existing structure. Sounds like you've used it in the past.
Yeah, yeah, really, like I said, from the 90s, we had them installed. The building that we just painted, we didn't paint because of failure of finish. We painted it because it was pink. Like, you know, the pink building going into Royal Oak?
Yeah.
That was the reason. So that tells you, yeah, so but that gives you some indication of just like the finish quality, right? So I think it's even a higher level than a Kynar 15, or it's at or 500, but it's at that level of finish.
Yeah.
The structural integrity of the product, you know, Fusco's team has a structural engineer that's also been working on our buildings since the early 70s or 60s. Steve Rudner at Robert Darvis and Associates. So the gentleman that's working on the structural design for this actually worked on the building of some of our. Steve actually was there back then. So we've got a good long history with our team, and I don't think you'd find a better structural engineer. So as far as knowing that we're going to have the proper, you know, fastening and attachment, we've already done pull tests on the strength of the existing substrate.
So what is the predicted life of the paint job? Is there?
So I would say based on the ones that we did, we're what? You know,
5 years.
Yeah.
30 years out of a Kynar finish.
yeah, typically 30 Kynar, it's Kynar.
Kind of.
But yeah, and then after that, like the product that we put on for paint, it's not a typical paint that you see on a house or anything like that. We actually put a product called Tanemic, and that's a product that I think you guys specify for like water towers and things. So that comes with a 20-year warranty on that paint. But we have, like Zach was saying, we've got 61 buildings. We maintain them all. I think in the course of 75 years, we've only ever sold one building. So we don't do that. That was only because it was, you know, way in Northern California and it was in the outskirts. You know, we keep and maintain. We've got a big facilities department that makes sure that we don't let the materials get out of maintenance.
Yeah. And one last question: is there any plan for a sign or some, in addition to the material on the side there?
Not a big building sign. Just the monument sign, I think, was designed.
Your sign
Yeah.
at street level.
Okay. Nothing up top on the side there. Okay.
The entranceway, the drop-off area in the very front, so that is from this rendering, I see that it's just going to be painted then, right? It's not going to have any of that on it. Or am I mistaken on that?
The entire building will get the new.
He's saying that the first floor, though, would.
But that drop-off center at the very
he's
front,
saying- oh, okay.
That's getting the same material.
is it? Okay.
And the circle drive out
It's
front.
just, it's just a lot. There's two different colors. of
Got
material.
it. So it's all going to be that material, just two different colors.
That is
Got it.
correct.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, as you can see in the renderings, the blue and the beige, actually it's a sandstone color, is the identical material. So we're not doing two different, it's all the same material enclosing the entire building.
Okay, good to know.
If you could just let me know if that material, this would make it farmer's math for me, if it's hurricane rated for some of those locations in Florida or something, and I would imagine if it is, it's unbelievably robust. We have nothing to worry about.
Yeah, I do know it's I do know the panel's used all over the country. It's
Yeah.
not a, that's not a local product. That's something that's, it's been on the market since the probably 60s, 70s. I mean, it's been out there a long time. It was under a different name before, like you said, Roberts was
Yeah.
the brand.
This
But-
particular product is completely designed for a high-rise like this. And
Okay.
these wind loans, as are the windows. When we design this type of high-rise building, the issue actually isn't the wind pushing. As you get around the corners, it's actually the wind pulling away from the building. You get a pull force, and that's what we designed for. And for this grade of building, we're probably designing for winds around 100 pounds per square foot at the top of the building, and so you build in a 1.5 safety factor on top of that. So that'd be winds of 150 pounds per square foot on every window and every piece of panel.
Great.
It's a pretty powerful load.
And is the intention to, I always notice the window air conditioners, so that's the way it's currently cooled. Is that plan intent for going forward to retain those, or is?
They're going to be changed pretty drastically. So the air conditioners that are there right now, if you look at them, they're intended to be just put out a window, and so they've got grills around all sides, and there's a bracket holding them off. The new design would have an actual sleeve, which is what we've got at our other locations.
Okay.
So the sleeve is actually manufactured and it completely encases the enclosure. So it's, the air conditioner comes out from inside and gets plugged back in. With the panels being as thick as they are, and they're gonna set out on structural steel, because there's gonna be steel girts up the building, we're gonna start making the building thicker and thicker. And then when we put that sleeve in, it's gonna come back into the building. So now instead of having 24 inches of air conditioner hanging out like it is now, that you're only gonna have.
Essentially, it conceals quite a bit of it.
Right, and we're gonna work to try to figure the best color of air conditioner, because we can get the sleeves, we can get them in color, or paint them with the product that'll match. So then we can hopefully just make them disappear into the siding.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you. It's a very detailed presentation here.
I just might want to mention more, though. This is part of a $13 million renovation to this building. So in addition to the exterior improvements, the windows, the roof, et cetera, the interiors are going to be extensively remodeled. Mechanical, electrical systems are being extensively remodeled. So it's quite a large investment from CSI's perspective, improving this building.
Well, it's important for us to support our seniors in the community, so we're excited to have that. I hope the rent doesn't change too much as a result of the upgrades.
No, actually, really good news on that one.
Yeah, it's actually getting better. So by prepaying the loan that they used to build this building originally, there's a program through HUD, and basically how it works is all the tenants get vouchers. They're based at the project, so they can't take them with them, but rent is going to be limited to 30% of the tenant's income. So that's the HUD definition for affordable. In most cases, people's rents are actually going down.
Very good.
So in layman's terms, like us construction guys talk, they just added subsidy to the building. So before, people paid the rent, and that's how much money you had to keep the building in good condition. Now, like he said, it's subsidized so that a person's rent doesn't have to ever go beyond, their. Yeah, it's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
That's the part we're super excited about, because that's a big thing for the folks there.
Any further questions? If none, I would entertain a motion then. Go ahead, Ed.
There's mention about the dumpster and enclosures, and that's all taken care of by the information in the site plan, and there's no really more discussion on it. There's nothing with respect to that enclosure or our requirements in terms of zoning.
Yeah, we do have zoning requirements for dumpster enclosures and equipment enclosures, and the details that they've shown on their plans do meet those standards. So they're in compliance with the ordinance.
Thank you.
I'll make a motion to approve the site plan review for address 255 West 14 Mile, Senior Citizens Center.
Support?
We have a motion, support. Anybody want to throw any conditions or anything? I don't see any outstanding problems or anything. In which case, I'll take roll call, please.
Mr. Timlin,
Yes.
Mr. Watson,
Yes.
Mr. Hara,
Yes.
Mr. Kucera,
Yes.
Mr. Sinaki.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Welcome to Clausen. Again.
Thank you.
And as we move along, we're on agenda item number 8 is the discussion of the sign ordinance amendments, Part 3.
It's also the last part before we look at the whole thing together next month. So this one is more limited than the last couple discussions. We had a lot of content the last couple times. This one is really honed in on a couple of items. So the first one, and the most important discussion for tonight, because most of the other stuff is pretty basic, sign ordinance content that we have to have, is the non-conforming signs. So back in 2020, the Planning Commission preferred to keep our non-conforming sign removal requirement as is with an updated time frame. The PC has turned over a fair amount in the meantime, though, so I wanted to revisit that conversation just so that I think the outcome will probably be the same, but I want to make sure everybody understands what we're doing with non-conforming signs in the city, and because it's a little unusual, just from, I mean, not to say that it's not done elsewhere in Michigan. It's done actually in quite a few different communities, but it's just a little outside the usual zoning framework that the Planning Commission is used to. In fact, the sign ordinance used to be in the zoning ordinance, and it was removed from the zoning ordinance and turned into a general ordinance specifically so that we could do this, they call it amortization of non-conforming signs. So I just want to make sure that the Planning Commission just understands, because I know we've got a lot of new members, and of course a couple of them are not here tonight, but nevertheless, what we do in our ordinance is we have a regulation that says if you have a non-conforming sign, you have to bring it into compliance basically anytime you do anything to it. So if someone's got a cabinet sign that's on a pole and it's more than 8 feet tall and they want to change out the cabinet or something, they are, under our ordinance, supposed to bring that sign into compliance. They're supposed to lower it to no greater than 8 feet tall. And a couple of them have wound up at the Zoning Board of Appeals because we had a gas station, for instance, where if they lowered it, it actually would have gotten in the way of the site distance triangle that we require. So they actually were allowed to keep it a little higher up so that people could see under the sign, but they did lower it somewhat. So I just want you all to understand that that's what our ordinance does. And in the original ordinance, there was a date of December 31st, 2014, that all non-conforming signs were to be removed, but that didn't happen. We still have some non-conforming signs around town. So if we do establish a new time frame, we have to consider what time frame we want to recommend to council, and then it ultimately falls to council to kind of push that actual removal. Since 2014, we've just handled it on a case-by-case basis. Someone comes in with a sign that's non-conforming, they bring it into compliance.
So let's review why in 2014, why weren't we able to implement that and make people update their signs? Was it just because cost of business? Is that what it was?
I think so.
We tried. I was sitting on council at that time, and they came in front of us with that. And our general overall feeling was it was too much to expect the businesses to put that kind of money into it. So we put an extension. I think we gave them about 5 years, and then I think that's run out, and we haven't enforced it since then. It's, the cost is drastic for a business.
So what makes us think that anything's different now? That if we were to set to something like this again, why would it be any different?
Yeah, that's a good question. And,
New council.
you know, and one of the things that we could do is keep the removal of non-conforming signs and not have a deadline. You know, if we're not going to push the deadline, then we would leave it out. And then if someone does touch their sign, then they have to bring it into compliance. But it's only done on a case-by-case basis, and you don't have that wholesale citywide.
Isn't that just going to make more sense? Because are we really ever going to mandate that people at any time frame change their sign again? Because someone's always going to bring up that financially I can't do this. I don't have that type of income coming, my business producing. So why wouldn't we just say when you make changes outside, or if you make a change to the sign, it has to be brought in the standard? But I just
As we stand now, if something goes wrong with my pole sign, the lights burn out, I'm allowed to repair that, am I not? Am I not repair the light bulbs? in
Well,
it?
certainly the lights could be replaced, yeah. You couldn't put a new panel in it, though. Or
if someone hits it,
otherwise.
knocks it down, you can't put it back up
No,
in
you
the same
can't put
way.
it back up, no. Definitely not.
So, rather than the deadline, how can we put into legally acceptable terms to get the planning commission and the zoning board out of the runarounds that have happened? How can we avoid the obstinance of the Rite Aid team? How can we avoid the obstinance of the Taco Bell team?
Right.
And so, can we put some reasonable scenarios in that says if you have a renovation project where you come for permits or a planning commission review, put it in your budget that the sign must come into compliance or don't come here. And if the sign needs repair more than a certain amount of reasonable dollars, say 40% of what you would expect to replace the sign, say that it's not acceptable, you know. Do they have to come in for a permit to repair a sign?
Not to repair a sign. If they were repairing damage, generally speaking, they wouldn't. If the sign had come down and they were trying to put it back up.
Well, I've seen people repair a house and everything is identical except for the fireplace or a couple of walls, you know, and it was just repair, you know, so they skirted the scenario of, oh, well, you know, I'm not doing brand new construction. I don't need all these permits type of a deal. I'm just repairing. So the scenario is from being in both committees that there's an objective to change a 1930s, 1940s, 1950s vision of the city to the current state. And in residential communities, that means you don't have all of this massive, large billboards, large signs, big things sticking in the air. You want to be, I don't know what the word is, maybe kind of homey as opposed to commercial next to the highway or something like that. So that type of scenario, I think, is more appropriate. If somebody comes in like Rite Aid saying, I want to change all the signs, but that one's not conforming, and so I'm just going to leave it that way. And Taco Bell are doing the same thing.
It's the workaround, yeah.
Somewhere in our ordinance, we ought to be able to say that this is done to make consistent aesthetics that's in the flavor of Clausen, and therefore, if you have something that's done before this flavor was, you know, put into our strategy, that you make repairs or you look at age or something like that, and you just got to bite the bullet and make something different.
Is that not part of our site plan approval now? If we approve a site plan, don't we hold them that they have to take their sign down?
Well, that was not the scenario with Taco Bell, and it was not the opinion of the strategists that gave us guidance here that if they didn't touch the pole sign,
Oh, as long as they don't touch it, they can keep it.
Yeah, but
that
Yeah,
was the
because they weren't doing a site plan, they were just came in for signs, yeah.
Okay.
Well, no, they came in for a variance
Right, they did. yeah.
on a bunch of non-conforming sign strategy because at that time, we weren't, in our sign documentation is accommodating for that particular, but it was very, well, I guess I'll say annoying to me, looking at this scenario, that there was this obvious thing that should have been brought to attention, which was the non-conforming pole sign, and the strategy was, well, we're not going to give that up, so we're just going to leave it.
Right.
And that was just, yeah, I guess one my kids, it was attitudinal, you know.
Yeah, it's happened a few times where people have been able to just keep their pole sign by just opting not to do anything with it. And
Yeah,
we've
but
got
okay,
a couple
so-
that are starting to look a little worn out.
So how did Pep Boys, how were they able to, like, what specific steps did they go through? Right, they sued the city, right? Isn't
They
that what they
sued
ended
the
up doing?
city, didn't they? Yeah.
Right. So, I mean, at a
Certainly,
certain,
our ordinance isn't strong enough to be defended in court. We have to have something in there legalized to make it so that we
and I mean, do we have any authority to make it strong enough to be able to, or is someone taking it to that degree, are they always going to win that battle?
Well, the courts do tend to favor property owners in general. I think if you had to point out a bias in our court system, you probably would find that there's a bias toward property owners. I mean, all we can do is state our reasons and make the language as tight as possible, basically. And then if we find ourselves in that situation, then we just have to lean on our, I mean, they went to it was a consent judgment, wasn't it?
Yeah.
To
So
what? I'm sorry, say it again?
there was a consent judgment. So ultimately, the city opted, rather than carrying the litigation to its final conclusion, the city opted to come to an agreement with Pep Boys. And that's often how municipal litigation ends, is that you work out a settlement, essentially, a consent judgment where each side gets a little bit of what they're looking for.
So when Taco Bell came in front of us, and you said it was variance, Ed?
Yeah.
That's what they came for? So did they only come in front of the,
ZBA.
ZBA, yes.
Yes.
They came in front of the ZBA for the signs and location placement and size on the building.
Right.
And I brought up, well, what about the pole sign? And the answer was, we're not touching that, so we can leave it as it is.
Yep.
but with saying that, they were within the guidelines, right? Because they weren't coming in front of us with a site plan.
Right.
And our previous one said, if you're coming with a site plan and you have a non-conforming sign, you have to change it. Well, if they did that, they didn't really, I mean, that's legitimate with what they said. They're not coming in front of us with a site plan. I mean, I just think plain and simple, we're not going to win those battles.
No, we're
We
not.
can't set a time to say everyone has to do it by this time. We're not going to win that battle. We already showed that. And when someone comes across and pushes us and says, we're keeping the sign, Pep Boys, Taco Bell, we're not going to win those either. So, I mean, Joe, what's the point of putting in the language? And we know full well that we're not going to enforce one, and the other is the city will probably, settle on something like that, which I'm not blaming the city for it. I mean, how much money do you want to put in to fight Pep Boys when you've got this viable business coming in?
Right. So as far as the time frame, I am more than happy to dump the time frame, because it didn't work last time. It didn't work when it was extended. you're right, it's probably not going to work in the future. Very few
Perry's-
Michigan communities have ever actually followed through on their amortization timeframe.
Perry's Pizza is a non-conforming sign, right? Am I correct in that? That's a pole sign, right? Am I right on Perry's
I
Pizza?
believe it is, yeah.
Yeah, I think
Okay,
so.
so if Perry's Pizza came in front and hey, said, we're gonna, site redesign for our building, and now we're saying you have to do your sign, to say to them, you have to do your sign, oh, by the way, Pep Boys, when they decided to do that, didn't have to. Larger corporation, they were able to get away with it. Like, I don't see where we have a fairness to other business owners. I mean, I understand that we want to get rid of those pole signs. That makes sense. Thank God it happened at the shopping center. It looks so much better what they have, the marquee signs, but I just feel like we're just doing work to do work, and I don't really understand the point of it. Just my opinion.
Right. Yeah, I mean, ultimately, the purpose of it is to create a greater sense of uniformity throughout the city in the way signs are treated, and to get at what Ed was saying earlier, a more modern residential feel of the city. That's really what the goal of requiring that non-conforming signs be removed is.
I mean, I guess if we think about it, if we left it in there and said, okay, if you're going to do a site plan redesign, then your sign has to come. I guess we could just keep the language in there, knowing full well that if someone wants to put the resources behind it and fight it, then they're going to fight it either way, but at least we've got it in there and
Sure.
we can still apply it.
Unless you want to talk to Rennis and see how legalese he can get with it. I mean, how strong.
Yeah, I mean, we can discuss it with him.
I would like you to consider those kind of words, and I would think that you would say, if you come for a site plan review, if you come for a sign permit, or if you come for a ZBA with respect to signage, that you need to address in your resolution non-conforming signs. And maybe something like Perry's Pizza, which I can't say about the planning commission, but I know the zoning board has looked at some of the things and said, for that particular lot, and historically, the pole sign kind of fits in and it stays, and it's consistent with Clausen. We did that with the Sinclair station that became we said, hey, they were trying to keep some of that old-time garage look, and the Sinclair sign strategy on a pole kind of fit in. But at least the ordinance would say, if you do those things with respect to your property, with respect to variances on signs, or with respect to a sign permit, address the whole thing.
Sure.
And if they got to come before the planning commission, or they got to come before the zoning board because they're not fitting exactly the published letter of the ordinance, then I guess that's what it's for. You know, you make considerations, all the time, but at least the ordinance would say, if you do those things, don't try to skirt an obvious scenario just by looking at what's stated in our language, and get your lawyers out and dance around it.
Sure. Yeah, I understand what you're saying. Yeah, I think that makes sense.
Yeah, I think it's the cases are going to just continue to come in front of us, and we have to deal with them as they show up.
Because
That's really how it always is, and that makes
right.
sense.
But I think what you're talking about strengthens what we have. Losing the time frame just allows us to focus on a case by case basis. But we're not changing the fact that over time we're going to be getting rid of these non-conforming signs. And this ordinance has been,
Or the business owners are.
yeah, well, the city in general.
I'm sorry, say that one more time, I'm sorry.
We are going to do this, or the business owners are going to?
The business owners ultimately.
The
would be
business
ones
owners are going to
doing
do it, right?
Yeah.
Right, we're going
When they have the money to do it, when they have the motivation to do it.
to push them in that direction. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and the other thing is that this rewrite of the ordinance has been done very carefully not to create a ton of new non-conforming signs. So what we've got is what's still going to be non-conforming, and we're we're not creating a whole bunch of new problems. So, anything else? Any other thoughts on that?
I've seen a lot of time be spent.
Oh, okay.
Go ahead.
I think to Ed's point, it is, I agree, and it is still going to be a case by case, because even just using Perry's as an example, and I'm not looking at the site and I don't know, but it could be that given that a monument sign wouldn't work there, that because of corner clearance, you couldn't, so it would be a case for a variance because
Right,
you
can't
know,
put it
it
there,
would have
right.
to be that way. And that's how you get a variance, is because, you know, you meet the criteria for a variance. So it's still, you try to get everybody to comply, but there are still going to be cases where it can't, so.
Makes sense.
Or strategically, the city's going to decide that it's not worth the fight, you know? It's not worth the time, it's not worth the effort. It's a minor, it might be a minor change over a technicality that, you know, somebody has deep pockets and you'll lose to Pep Boys. You know, Clausen will lose to Pep Boys. We almost lost to Viacom over the billboard sign, but then that cost the city a good amount of time and money.
Sure.
But that's their choice.
That's
If
yes.
rather than use that money to just make the sign compliant, they chose to go this way.
Yeah, but this situation is
people
going to
aren't
make
gonna
my
do
friend
that.
Rennis money. It's going to cost us taxpayers money if there's a lot of lawsuits brought on the city.
Yep.
So that's what I don't want to do. I think we've had enough fun in these lawsuits recently. So I see risk in this. I see more to lose than to gain. I appreciate the desire wholeheartedly to make the city look better in the future and to be comprehensive in its
I
approach.
think Venice doesn't get paid per lawsuit. Our city attorney is actually our retainer, so it's not like it is going to run up the city's dime for everything that, and most people, I think, try to comply.
That is true. The vast majority of people who come in, when we tell them non-conforming signs have to be removed, they pretty much immediately say, "Oh, sure,
Absolutely.
fine."
Yeah.
You know, so keep it. Yeah, I think we need to have it in there. And really, it's completely normal to have that in a sign ordinance.
But what I understand is we have that flexibility today. We can go to any business in town and say, hey, your sign is non-conforming. I don't know if you have any plans to improve it or not, but we would really encourage you to do it in non-threatening terms that gives them the flexibility to either consider it, do it, or not do it. Or we can make it very strong language in the ordinances that drives that, you know, with greater pressure and at the risk, I should say, of legal action, which has been discussed ad nauseum here, so.
Yeah, and I think that's what we're talking about not doing. We're not going to have a time frame in there by which we're going to say everybody needs to take their non-conforming signs down.
And Nate, it only occurs if they're making a change to their sign. If their sign is going to stay existing and they're not making a change to it, it can stay. Only when they come in and say, I want to change it, I want to change the face to it, I have an existing non-conforming sign that I want to make a change to.
Yeah.
Now you have to make it conforming because
Yeah.
you're changing an existing non-conformance.
Right.
I'm
100% behind that.
You're not changing it.
Yeah.
Well, that's the way it is now. It stays. You're not making a change to it, it stays. So maybe doesn't conform to the sign ordinance now, but it did then. You're not changing it. It can stay just as it is.
Essentially is grandfathering, right? Unless you're
That's
making a change.
Unless you're making a change.
Yeah.
You want to change the face of it, I want to update it, I want
Yeah.
my logo has changed now, I want to make a change. Now you have to conform.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
if you're keeping it just the same, that's how it works. It just stays. It's an existing non-conformance.
Yeah, so I like that very much, and thank you for the clarification, because it wasn't how I interpreted it. So if we take out the deadlines, which is in your document here under an administration and enforcement.
Yeah, it's highlighted because it's an old date.
Yeah, so. we've got 90 days following the cessation of any business. So in that situation, if the business closed its doors for some reason, a clock begins, or it's a stopwatch begins, and after 90 days, we're in a position where the city wants to go in and say, tear down that sign and start from scratch. Is that the strategy there?
Yeah, essentially, but really it's more likely to happen on reoccupancy when someone comes in and says, here's the sign I want to do at this site. Then you're gonna, I don't think we've ever said, oh, this business has been closed for 90 days. That sign needs to be taken down. I don't think that's ever been done.
Right.
I don't think so.
I would agree.
I think people are confused right now. Because your section 1 gives a good section, a reason of why we're eliminating non-conforming signs. Section 2 says you got to, whatever sign you have to maintain it. Section 3 says if you come in for a site plan, you redo the sign.
Yep.
Section 4 says if you do the thing about the business, then the sign becomes, and that's where I think we've gotten into some of these discussions, that a building could have a sign, the people could move out, 200 days later, somebody could come in and say, okay, well, I don't do that, and all of a sudden, did they want to go out there and just change the panel on the sign?
Right.
And then we say, we got a problem. The answer is no. The building owner needs to do something different. So either we are or we aren't in favor of putting in wording about nonconformance. And my statement is that a site plan is not the only reason. A sign permit should be the reason, and an appeal to the ZBA ought to be a reason to address the complete signage, including the non-conforming signs.
But a sign permit, they're going to have to come in front of us. And a sign permit, are you talking about new sign?
No,
When you say sign permit?
that's all done administratively. When they come in for a new sign, a lot of times they'll come in just for the wall sign, but they have a non-conforming pole sign
Okay,
or something.
okay, that makes more sense.
Yeah. And that's what he's getting at is if they've got the non-conforming pole sign and they come in to replace the wall sign, they should be doing the pole sign at the same time. Otherwise, they don't get the approval for the wall sign that they want to change.
I'm just thinking that's the business, and it makes sense to address signage as a whole and not piecemeal.
As a site.
As a site. Now,
Right.
if it's administratively, if somebody came in and they had a pole sign and they came in and they said they want to do the wall sign, you point out the fact they got a pole sign is non-conforming, you say, present a plan to do something different, or take your case to the zoning board. Those are your two options.
Sure.
Or you don't get the sign permit. You can't do, the administrator at that time, and I know you guys are really good at that, the administrator at that time goes, I can't give you this because here's chapter 14 over here, and it says, if you're doing this, you got to address this.
Sure.
But that's going to be the consensus of the board, and the consensus from council as to, do they want that in there at all?
Right.
It's,
Well, I think probably what my job is now, after having this discussion, is to give you kind of both versions of the language, so that you can see, all right, here's
Good cop,
here's
bad
what
cop.
that looks like, and then, we can also move forward without that. But I think what you're talking about is clarifying, if nothing else, of the process and when things are triggered. Because right now, I think there are a couple of kind of mild ambiguities in there as to when you have to change out a non-conforming sign.
So remind me, why did Taco Bell drop their request for a variance?
They're waiting to see what the sign ordinance says.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I think we have a
That's
few
a good
people
reason.
waiting right now, yeah. I think we have a few people waiting right now.
So that's interesting. So they're waiting because they know we're going to change it, or we've told them, changes are coming, or?
We'd let
Yeah.
them know
Yeah.
that we're looking at the sign ordinance, and they may want to look at what happens.
Yeah. Now, things aren't changing substantially in terms of how much signage you get or how tall it can be. So some of those people are ultimately going to be coming back in, with, maybe even variance requests. But, yeah, there are people waiting because they know we're going through the process, and they're going to see what the outcome is.
And it might be advantageous for us if we had Renaissance output on as what is legally defendable by the city.
Yeah, I was about to suggest the same thing. I think a very thorough lessons reviewed of these past legal conflicts that the city's been involved in is critical to understand how to engineer this to be right. Because I think if it's done correctly, it's very simple to interpret, to understand, and to comply. And if it's overly thought, it can potentially get snagged on so many things that it doesn't serve anybody's purposes.
Right.
And at the end of the day, I think our responsibility is to facilitate the ordinances, to set them up in a way that everybody's more or less wins. The businesses know what they have to do, and they're motivated to do it, and it's stuff that makes Clausen great, and it doesn't bog us down or ZBA down unnecessarily. It doesn't bog down the city attorney. Everybody knows what they need to do, and they're motivated to do it, and it's reasonable. And in general, everybody just complies because it's easy to comply, and everybody is happy to comply. So it seems like in the past, and I'm new to this, but it seems like in the past with Taco Bell, Rite Aid, and other places, like they had a different idea and they didn't want to change their idea, or there was so much ambiguity in the ordinance that it was very difficult to say. It's very simple, look and do. It wasn't like that, and so that's the opportunity ahead of us. So yeah, I'd love to hear from Rennis. And this language, is this from where did it come from? There's some very detailed, it's impact to public safety and the police and fire protection and all of this stuff.
Yeah, this is from the ordinance now.
Is it really?
Yeah, it's the existing language in the ordinance, yep.
So,
Let's see, so I did add a little language to the administrative portion after non-conforming signs. It's just about removal of signs. So if you're taking down a sign, if it's got supports or footings, they have to be removed. The ground has to be returned to a state approximately similar to its condition prior to the installation of the sign. Any electrical service to the removed sign, if that's not removed, has to be properly capped and safely maintained with the power supply turned off. And don't really need that other signs thing there. I just wanted to get a little bit of something in there just to address the safety and the site conditions when you do remove a sign. And of course, this is mostly going to affect freestanding signs. But nevertheless, I want to make sure that if you've got a wire going under a parking lot to get to a sign, that when the sign gets removed, something is properly done with that wire to secure it and make it safe. And then our appeals process is also part of that language. Working on murals and then gas stations and drive-throughs. Those are site plan issues, and yes, they do involve some signage, but I'd like to move those to the zoning ordinance and deal with them as part of the site plan for a gas station or a drive-through restaurant. Because that's really where those things should be addressed.
you're talking about the signs for the gas stations and for the
Yeah,
drive-thrus.
exactly. And because of the way we're treating digital signs now, we don't even need the digital sign portion of the gas station sign thing, because a certain amount of any sign that's freestanding can be digital. So the gas stations are covered. And we don't have to make a carve out for them that's different from all the other signs. That's because we're calling attention to what the business is. You could argue that that's content based. So I think that's a positive thing too, that we're cutting out another content regulation there. Yeah, otherwise, my plan is obviously we'll have some language to review next time regarding non-conforming signs, and thank you for the discussion tonight. I think it was good. Otherwise, my plan is to bring you the full sign ordinance so that you can look at the whole thing all at once, and then once we get comfortable with that, we'll set it for a public hearing and move it on to council.
So then you don't need a motion for this tonight then?
No, I don't need a motion for it tonight because we're going to do one more review.
Can you remind me, what do we do with the ordinance about the chicken?
The chicken on top of the,
Yeah.
it's staying.
Is that in the sign ordinance? Is that in the planning commission?
Wasn't it grandfathered in years ago?
It's a symbol now, so it's.
Well, yeah, all right,
It's
so
left.
I talked about the chicken, but what about symbols?
Right. So in the future, the chicken, if it were deemed a sign, could be approved under the landmark sign language that I introduced to the sign ordinance draft last time.
There was last time, the
Yeah.
landmark stuff, okay.
Yes, exactly. And
What
that can
about-
be
what
that can
about-
be done as part of site plan approval. So
What about people, and I would point to like Puma Chug, where they had this strategy of what was here in Clausen and how they named it. What if they would want to put something up that was new but represented historical? Is that in the historical section?
I think that could be covered by that landmark sign section. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
You want to bring antique signs back?
Well, there's places that have done that to
Yep.
draw attention and be historical, and sure, why not? I just wanted to make certain that we thought that we had those things, because the chicken was going to be a big fight at one time, so.
Chickens,
Wanted it at your house?
chicken's not going anywhere.
I did offer to give it to the city when he took the building over. He's like, does the city want it?
Yeah, and
He
they
was fine
said,
with keeping it too.
Are you set, Joe?
Yeah. For signs, I'm set. Yep.
Okay, then we'll move on to agenda item number 9 is other business.
None tonight.
so
I have some.
do we have in our minutes then that you volunteered for sign instructions in 2 sections, 2 variants? Or 3 or 4, whatever you come up with that might be necessary?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just one for me, Mr. Chair. Other business was approached by.
I apologize. I can't hear you.
Sorry, yeah. Is this any better?
Yep.
Okay, and I'll just try to talk louder. So I was approached by a business owner in town, was talking about the parking on the street. There's a couple-hour grace period suggested on certain streets and not others. Who handles this? Is this council or is this?
Well, I mean,
DDA?
I guess handles it on a day-to-day basis would probably be public safety. As far as setting rules like that, it would ultimately be council.
Okay.
Especially if it's on city right of way.
Yeah, we have these spots that are 2-hour parking to encourage business to basically come buy a donut and leave so someone else can buy a donut and so on and so forth. And we have some areas where the signs are there and they do just that. And then we have other areas where essentially we want the same thing to happen, but there's no sign. So people park there for 10 hours a day or something like that. And
Sure.
so it was brought up. So that's a council matter, basically.
Yeah, typically, I don't know if DDA gets involved with that at all, but yeah, I'm hearing no. So yeah, council was the one
Okay.
that was
Thanks
the
for the
body that
clarification
sensed
on
that.
that.
Yeah.
also had a resident that brought up something to me. Some residences are next to commercial businesses, and they have big lights, street lighting or parking lot lighting or something like that. Do we govern that at all in our time of day that the lights can be on, or?
So we do, anytime a new site is approved, that is addressed. As far as existing sites, that is a nonconformity that because zoning isn't retroactively enforceable, there's not much we can do about it from a zoning perspective. We may have some nuisance standards in the general code. I could ask Rennis if there's anything about that.
That'd be so great if you could, and I don't mean to make a big issue of this here, but it was something I'm trying to sharpen my edge on of understanding of where jurisdictions fall, so appreciate your help on that. That's all I had, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Anything else? Or?
Yeah, so, Joe, do we have any idea what's going on with that church? I can't tell, have they actually started to do work? I'm sorry, the church
This
on Main
one
Street.
down here.
So they have started doing work, and so they are working towards trying to get something completed there, okay.
If they put windows in, yep.
Okay, so they are.
Yeah, they've done a few things.
There was one other one I was going to ask about. Oh, is anything ever happening with the old Clausen Grill? Anything, no one showing any interest in that building? It just,
I understand there are people who have shown interest. The seller has not shown interest.
really? A building that's not producing any revenue and they're not showing interest in? Oh, that's unfortunate.
It's the same issue we've had with Burger King over the years.
I don't know that a price has even been set there. There have been people who have inquired. And
Ah, that's unfortunate.
One thing I noticed, I think it was last weekend, I had breakfast at Old Port, and we have one of our city crosswalks right there with the traffic light and everything else. And the island, it looks like it's nothing but solid weed in there. I didn't recognize a single plant that I could,
I agree.
be happy with.
It is an ongoing issue. It's an ongoing issue with determining what's going to go there, what the maintenance is going to be.
Can we at least mow the weeds? Can we have them, have them
Take
cut
them
down?
down?
Yeah,
Not a big,
yeah.
yep.
Just
At the
one-
very least, I would think I will request that.
Yeah, just two guys and a weed whacker, they could just level it out.
Exactly, yeah. Now, I'll bring that
Yeah.
forward.
Yeah, so how does that work? Educate me a little bit if you could. So are there, I mean, it's not your responsibility to go out there and weed whack, obviously.
Not
so-
today. Tomorrow it might be.
But, like, I also noticed that the hanging baskets we couldn't do this year. Like, how do we make that happen next year somehow? Is there a requirements list? I'm in the
Oh,
engineering
no,
business,
no,
so I'm
there's
just.
no requirement to do that.
Yeah.
The DDA split costs with the city for many years to put up hanging baskets. The last 3 years, they have not thrived. Having hanging baskets up that did not look good was worse than having nothing.
Agreed.
So we chose not to do it, and I have volunteers right now who are checking with other cities. Two in particular that I have pointed out are Marine City and the city of St. Clair, where their baskets are enormous and look beautiful.
Royal
I have
Oaks are too. They're
volunteers-
beautiful. I just know
Huh?
Royal Oaks. Just
Yeah.
was observing
So
them last
I
week,
have
and they're just.
volunteers calling those cities now and asking, what is it you're doing? What
Oh,
are we
good.
not doing? One of them actually pointed out that they had the same baskets we have. Well, what are you doing that's different? So, one city said that they have an employee, a school person, a kid that comes in and starts at 7:00. It takes them 3 hours, and they do every basket in the city. But
Every
they
day
do
or
it-
once a week,
But they
or-
do it every day.
Every day.
So, I don't know. We're putting all that information together to see what happens for next year.
Good.
There's going to have to be a budget from the city. It used to be through Parks and Rec. Part was through the DPW. Part was through the Parks and Rec. to keep them watered. So we're putting all that information together now and see where we go next year.
Yeah. DPW did not do the watering?
It was a part-time summer person.
Oh, okay. We
Right,
paid
who
someone to
worked
do it.
once a week, who was on there on Saturdays, and that's when she did it.
The Parks and Rec person did it on the weekend. The part-time Parks and Rec person did it on the weekend. DPW had a summer person that did it during the week.
Oh, okay.
I'm not sure how consistent it always was.
It almost seemed daily. They had a gator with a pump on it, and he would cruise down the streets.
Yeah,
Okay,
and
good.
we did have, we purchased the baskets from Eckert's that have a water reservoir in them. We purchased them for that reason. I just learned that one of the other communities we talked to have the same ones. Eckert's came a few times a year and taught the person or persons who were watering. We still did not have good results. Only 1 year do I know that we had really good results when a person in the water department actually did the watering. So we're working on it.
I guess where I was going with it, is that DDA's responsibility, or is it city managers?
No,
or-
the DDA split the cost to purchase them with the city. The watering came under the city's jurisdiction over two different budgets, Parks and Rec and
Okay,
summer person in the DPW.
well, thank you.
Any progress on the clock repair?
Actually, I have, now that it's been turned back over to us, I had gotten, for the DDA, I had gotten quotes on this last fall. And then the high school girls took it on as a fundraising effort, which we greatly appreciate. And they kind of took over the whole bondugal. Now they're done. Their class ended a long time ago, and it's been turned back over to me, the DDA. So I have been in contact in the last few days with two different companies. I have quotes from two different ones. One is coming from Grand Rapids actually tomorrow to look at the clock and actually get a good hands-on and make sure that their quote was good. So we'll between the two of them, one is more local, one is also in Michigan, the Grand Rapids one, and we'll decide from there how we go.
Let's get that one fixed and have somebody work on this clock that's not coordinated.
I was noticing that too.
Somebody with a ladder and a battery, I'm thinking, is pretty much all you need there. Yeah,
Tom Palmer tried to fix it standing on a chair with a broom one time,
Yeah.
and that didn't work.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And in answer, Nathan, to your question about parking, there was a parking study just completed a couple months ago by the DDA. I'm pretty sure that if there were any questions about parking, they would probably be looking at that parking study first to look for answers in that. It was a pretty comprehensive parking study.
Okay. This is available on online?
Yep.
Okay.
Joan, just because you're here, I've just spent a lot of time downtown this summer, just between walking down, going to restaurants. It's just amazing down there. It's phenomenal.
Isn't it?
Yep, just love it.
I've had a lot of people in other cities to call and inquire about what we've done. And I only explain that it's taken us 15 years to be an overnight sensation. So,
But it looks great.
yeah,
So,
yeah. So things are, you never saw people walking downtown. I remember about 5 years into this job, seeing people walking and thinking that was amazing. And now it's so much better.
Yep.
It just keeps getting
great foot
better.
traffic. Saturday afternoon, we sat in White Wolf, and it was just phenomenal seeing the people coming up and down.
Yeah, it's a
Very
lot of
cool.
fun.
Yep.
It really is a lot of fun. Yep.
Anything else under other business? Okay, we'll move on to agenda item number 10 is the planner's report.
The only thing I wanted to mention tonight was that, I'm preparing the full sign ordinance for you. The other thing that I'm working on right now is preparing a master plan review for the fall. I'd like the Planning Commission to take a look at the master plan, all the implementation items in there. And my goal for that is over 1 or 2 meetings for us to review that and then produce a little report for council to say, here's where we stand with our master plan. So that will be an October, possibly into November project.
Coming up on the deadline for the master plan update, right?
We're getting fairly close, and yeah, so I think the time is good to do it now, and so that we all kind of know where we stand when the deadline does hit, and then we have to make some decisions about whether or not we're going to do an update or stand pat or what we're going to do.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, I don't think we could have the time to do very many changes, but when is the official, and what is the official? It gets sent to Lansing, or?
It would be next year, was it when we need to make a decision about whether or not we're going to do an update to the plan. So again, that's a review of where we stand is valuable to do right now, so that we have a sense of where we are before we have to make that decision. And there's no master plan cop in Lansing who says,
Okay.
you look at your master plan every 5 years, but it puts you in a much better position vis-a-vis your zoning map and ordinance if you've properly reviewed your master plan every 5 years. Because if someone, if you're a community that hasn't updated your master plan in 20 years, and you have a zoning ordinance and a zoning map, and you deny someone, they could say, I'm going to sue you. You haven't updated your master plan in 20 years. What is your zoning map even based on at this point? And that puts you in a pretty bad position when you go to court. But if you're doing it every 5 years and your zoning map and your zoning ordinance reflect what's in your master plan, you're in a much, much stronger position if litigation comes up. Yeah, well, yeah, and then, yeah, as far as funding opportunities through the MEDC, of course, we just got the RRC Essentials certification. Joan put a ton of work into that with our help, and we're one of a handful of communities across the state that is certified RRC Essentials. So that opens a pool of funding for us from the Michigan Economic Development Corporation that is now available.
Redevelopment ready community.
Right.
Development ready.
Yeah. And if we were to do a master plan update, let's say, there would probably be money from the MEDC to help us do it.
So redevelopment ready communities shows that we have everything aligned. We have plans in place and procedures in place for training, and that our ordinances are easy to read, that we have processes in place so that we streamline development, that we make things as easy as possible for any kind of development here. Not easy as possible as in pushing something through, but that our ordinances and our processes are easy to understand and make things flow well.
Clear and consistent.
Business friendly.
Yep.
And resident friendly. Yep.
Okay, agenda item number 11 is staff reporting and training opportunities. I see training opportunities popping up on my emails quite often.
Yes. Yes, after the monthly report was done, there are a few things that came across my desk. One was the Livable Communities. You might want to take a look at that. We are named as a community for a lifetime, which means that we try to do things to make sure that people can stay in their community and as long as possible. We want to make that easy. So there were some things in there to take a look at, and that means that we show in our zoning that we offer all types of opportunities for development for people young to old to be able to live here. So there were some good things in that. And today something came across my desk. It was the Michigan Planner article about the short-term rentals that I know we've talked about that. Council's been talking about it. You might want to take a look at that also. So I sent that today. Other than that, any questions?
You by chance see our new barbecue place was on Channel 4 News.
I heard that today,
Yeah,
yes.
That's posted on Facebook. I seen a
Yes, they
short
are
cut of it.
offering 20% off your total bill today and
If you come
tomorrow.
in and drop somebody's name, you gotta say something.
They look pretty busy tonight, so, good.
Yeah, they're winning
Yeah.
some awards, yeah, so they're doing very good.
A lot
Yeah.
of award-winning restaurants in Clausen now.
There are,
Hollywood
yes.
Restaurant of the Year in the Free Press.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I don't know if you know, but we have a subgroup of the DDA, it's called Dine Clausen, and that is a group that includes all of the restaurant owners, managers, whoever they've appointed to be part of this group, so that we work collectively and can help support each other, answer questions, and do events that make a difference for all of them. So, was it?
Okay, thank you. Seeing no attorney here, we have no legal update. Unless someone else has any comments or anything, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I make a motion to adjourn the planning commission meeting for this evening.
Support?
And I have support. Roll call, please.
Mr. Watson,
Yes.
Mr. Tinlin,
Yes.
Mr. Sinaki,
Yes.
Mr. Kucera,
Yes.
Mr. Hara.
Yes.
Thank you, everyone.
So what channel was the restaurant reviewed on?
I saw it on my notifications on Facebook that somebody posted it.
Channel 4, you said?
They did it in the studio. It was just a bunch of the news people there, and they brought some food in. And they were saying how wonderful the food, and they had some type of a trophy there that they got. And they said if you come in there on Tuesday and mention this name you get 20% off.
Have you been there yet?
No, haven't heard nothing but good about it, though. I heard everybody's raving
was-
about it.